recording in three, two, and one. So Zig likes to do these music lists, and he makes he very painstakingly makes the list, puts them together on YouTube so I can go listen to them. And often I fail and I forget that I've got to go listen to them, or I get them last minute and I don't get a whole lot of good notes on it, but I try to give a listen to it. So with that, did I listen to this and the song list from last episode? Well, if you listened to last week, you know I did. And yes, I listened to the second set that we're going to talk about as well. And so the question I'm going to pose to everybody, do you think that I hate Ziggy after having to listen to these 20 songs? The answer is fucking yes, I do. Welcome to episode 174 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 174. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week, the ups and the lows, the highs, let's see, the ups and the downs, the highs and lows, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad. I think I stumbled over myself in there. Oh well. I
The
have,
nerd and the bird.
and the nerd and the merd, thank you. I have to tell all of our faithful listeners out there, I am sacrificing myself this week because as of the time of recording, it is now 11:23 on a Sunday morning, and the Cowboys are on at noon, so I will be missing some of the games. So you're welcome. Um, I did get a new laptop because my old one was starting to have a lot of problems and it was crashing constantly. So I got a new laptop. So I'm having to deal with Windows 11. Let me say this about Windows 11. First of all, I'm pissed as all get out at Microsoft because Windows 10 was supposed to be the last operating system. They were supposed to
Yes.
just be doing security patching and updates from there, not get a whole new system. Well, now we have Windows 11,
You
and
can't move the search bar.
yes, you can. Yeah, you can. I've got mine moved. I've got mine moved over to the left where it's supposed to be. It's real easy to move. It's not hard. I'm not a fan of Windows 11. They've moved things unnecessarily. It's harder to find things. You know, someone like you and I that deal a lot with the system settings and going on behind the scenes to fix computers and whatnot. Things are harder to find in Windows 11. You've really got
Yes,
to
they are.
search for them, and it's a
Yes, they
pain in
are.
the ass.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's not click click. It reminds me of eight.
a
Eight was
little
a
bit.
pain in the ass to find anything on.
Yeah, a little bit. But for those of you not in the know, Windows 10 end of life is October 2025. Microsoft will no longer provide support for it after that. So you kind of have to go to Windows 11. So at least I'm on it now and getting used to it. I upgraded my work laptop to Windows 11 and had so many problems. I ended up actually replacing the laptop completely and going back to Win 10 on that. Um, but yeah, it's just stuff is so much harder to find in 11. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying it at all. Um, hope everybody is enjoying the new music we're putting at the end of the show. Please make sure you stay tuned at the end as we do have somewhere between 8 and 10 different AI generated songs that we're adding to the end. So hope you like them. Do give us some comments on those. Let us know the ones you like, the ones you don't like. I personally thought they were pretty cool and I liked them. I did upwards of about 20 to 25 different songs before I came across the ones that I thought were perfect for the show. So be listening to those.
Good
That
stuff.
good stuff. That is all I have. So Zig, if you want to take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Hey, we're jumping right back into the DC indie scene. Now, in the last episode, we talked about how there were two different, I don't want to say disparaging, but two different, completely different sounds that were going on in DC that were playing in the same venues and a lot of times on the same bills. Um, One of those was the Atlantis, and it was located in the rear room of the Atlantic building on the ground floor at 93 F Street Northwest, and it was a short-lived venue, but was significant in the development of the punk scene. The first DC venue to host primarily punk and new wave bands, the Atlantis' first punk concert featured the Slinky Boys, Urban Verbs, and White Boy on January 27th, 1978. By early 1979, the Atlantis had closed, but the space would reopen under the new ownership on May 31st, 1980, as the Nightclub 30, soon known as the 930 Club. They call it 930 Club because the address of the old one was 930 F Street. Uh, it was among the earliest Washington, D.C. punk bands formed in the early 80s and played at this location, which we have talked about. Uh, the tradition of holding all ages shows at small DIY spaces has roots in early Washington, D.C. straight edge movement, and it emerged from the idea that people of all ages should have access to music, regardless if they're old enough to drink or not. Um, so there was kind of a shift around. So in the early 80s, you had these all ages shows playing at like the 930 Club and places like that, Adams Morgan, whatnot. Um, but about 1984, 1985, um, there was a white supremacist group that started to show up at the shows. They were called Hammerskins. I think I've talked about this before. I got saved by a gentleman known as a young urban knight. Yeah, uh, who saved me from getting a trouncing by some Hammerskins one evening at the Axis Club in Fort Worth. Um, really, it's Steve the Punk. I ended up going to college with Steve later on. Steve Punk was awesome. Big old dude he was really straight edge and was really into the music. First guy I ever met who shaved his head on purpose. It's like the dude had a full head of hair. He just liked to keep it shaved. But so as a as a getting away from this Hammerskin showing up, they they started these weird drum circle groups, and they basically picked up the congas that they were using in the go-go bands in 1985, and they called it Revolution Summer. And they did a bunch of stuff at the park and on the mall and all around DC, these free shows they put on. And the idea was the violence and nihilism that had become identified with punk rock, largely by the media, had begun to take hold in DC. And most of the people who started the movements were repelled and discouraged from going to those shows because, again, these Hammerskins took over. They tried to do it here too. We had a different approach as opposed to having out of town concerts. We had the DSB and Yuck, which were groups of, I don't want to say gangs, but they protected people from the Hammerskins here. Um, but that's not what they did in DC. They had these big outdoor shows, and it basically changed the music. Um, this is where the idea of emo comes from. Right to Speed, Spring, Lunch Meat, and I would say the six. Uh, um, the six only lasted for about a year, but I would say that the first emo song, which I have included on this list, and possibly one of my favorite songs from the DC scene, called Swan Street, which is a street in Georgetown in DC. Um, I think it's emblematic of the sound and everything else, and it's in this list, and I love it. Um, so again, that's what's going on over. I don't want to say on that side of town because it's the same town. Um, so at the same time, some of the Go-Go's bands, the Young Senators and stuff, were playing clubs as well in Crystal City in Virginia, which is just on the other side of the river from DC. Um, and having big, basically warehouse shows. Um, and inspiring some other R&B sounds that were kind of going out there at the time. The Young Senators were big, so was Rare Essence and Chuck Brown and the EUs, and just it was going. They were going gangbusters, and they also showed up to some of these Revolution summer shows, which were, enigmatic of wanting to come together. And at that point, the bands and the sounds started to come together. That's kind of what we're going to talk about now. So we've got Scream, Came Without Warning. It's an American hardcore band from Washington, D.C. They originally formed in the suburbs of Bailey's Crossroads, Virginia, in 1981. Um, they played all the way up until 2009, and as of January 2012, they were on tour in Europe. As of 2017, the band was still touring both America and the United Kingdom. Scream was formed in Northern Virginia by Pete Stahl, Fran Stahl, and Skeeter Thompson, and Kent Stacks, who replaced the original drummer Steve Alton. And again, it's the two guitars, one bass player, one singer. They recorded their music at the basement of Inner Ear Studios in Arlington, Virginia. Scream of the first of DC's independent Discord record labels to release a full-length album as opposed to 7 or 12-inch EPs. Um, what did you think about Came Without Warning by Scream?
I can't stand punk. I just can't. No, I tried sticking with this one. I just couldn't. Punk is just not my genre, and I did not like this one. Can't do it.
I
No,
see. I love this song. It doesn't sound punk to me. It sounds more like rock and roll.
not very punk to me.
Um, it's I love Scream, and also, if you like Dave Grohl, Scream is his first band.
Hmm,
That was the first band he played in.
hmm.
It When they split up the first time, they left him on the west coast of the U.S. They split up and they went back to DC and didn't tell him. So he was staying at this friend of his sister, who was a stripper, in this apartment. And that's when he got the call to come play with the Melvins originally. And then he moved up to Seattle into an apartment with Kurt Cobain. And that's when he joined Nirvana.
Hmm.
But yeah, Scream, the first time they split up, they, they left. Left Dave Grohl in a stripper's one-bedroom apartment and went back to DC and didn't tell him. The next song on our list is DJ Cool, Let Me Clear My Throat. It is steeped in go-go, but this one also has kind of a hip hop sound to it. Um, this recording was released in 1996, but he actually Let Me Clear My Throat actually goes back to about 1989. But the one that everybody's familiar with is from 1996, and that's the one I released. Um, they would repeat over break beats for several minutes. The song also began by sampling Hollywood Swingin' by Kool and the Gang. The song is a recognizable dance floor filler, and the track remains popular to this day. In 2003, DJ Kool contributed to the song Hit the Floor from the Macho Man Randy Savage studio album Be a Man. DJ Kool is one of those guys that was working in and around the go-go scene and also like hip hop. So he kind of blended those two things. And got some of these punk guys to play guitar in the background. So it's kind of a mixture of everything. And this is a big club hit and has been for years. What did you think about Let Me Clear My Throat by DJ Spring or DJ
Uh,
Cool?
I don't like rap either. It sounded like they wanted to be funk for a minute, but then failed miserably at both rap and punk. Just pass on
Let
this one.
me clear my throat.
Yeah, pass, 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 pass. I'm leaving now.
I love this song. I think it's great. This is a great background, dude. Especially in a club. The next song is For Want of by Rites of Spring. Rites of Spring is basically that seminal idea of that post-hardcore sound. It's still pretty hardcore, or it's still pretty hard, but they want to make their songs more than 2 minutes, and have cleaner sounding recordings and not sound like they were made in a basement. Um, they're from Washington, D.C., and they were formed in late 83, along with Embrace and Beefeater. They were one of the mainstay acts of the 1985 Revolutionary Summer that we talked about. Right Spring increased the frenetic violence and visceral passion of hardcore punk while simultaneously experimenting with its composition rules. Lyrically, they also shifted hardcore into intensely personal realms, and this is basically the birth of emo. Um, they performed several songs in and around DC. Vocalist, guitarist Guy Picciotto and drummer Brendan Canty went on to play in Fugazi. with Ian MacKaye. But Rites of Spring still pops up every so often. I think, matter of fact, I think they're touring now. Um, so what did you think about Rites of Spring?
I seriously contemplated your death at this point for making me hear most of this
You
music.
don't like Rites of Spring? Rites of Spring's awesome. How
The,
can you
ha-
like the Foo Fighters and not like Rites of Spring?
the hatred I had for you was extreme at this point.
Rites of Spring is awesome, and I'll stand on that.
Pure, white, hot hatred.
You just need to, I think you need to expand your palate, sir.
I have an
The
expansive
next,
palate. Thank you very little.
the next song is Hot Cold Sweat. Meet Me at the Go-Go. Hot Cold Sweat is a compilation band formed by several other go-go acts. So you got people from the EU, people from the Soul Searchers, people from um, all of the bands that we talked about perform with Hot Cold Sweat. And then they have this like YouTube radio station that just does these party records essentially. Um, Meet Me at the Go-Go is one of the biggest ones, and it's awesome. And I had to put it in here. It's not a specific Hot Cold Sweat is not a specific band. It's a little bit of everybody. There are a couple of primary players, but for the most part, everybody in Hot Cold Sweat is in every other band. Um, and it's a compilation, and I think it's awesome. What did you think about Meet Me at the Go-Go?
I was glad we were back, finally back to some cool funk on this one. This one had me bobbing my head like I was in a night at the Roxbury.
Yeah.
Not as good as some of the other funk in this list, but I really
Mhm.
dug this one. This was a good song. I
Yeah.
like this one.
Well, I mean,
This was a
again,
nice
it's
palate cleanser for me.
uh, this is this is like everybody kind of does something with Hot Cold Sweat. And like I said, they started out as a different band, but then they all joined different bands and then they kept doing Hot Cold Sweat. So it's one of those things. Is it a really a band or is it a compilation? It's a little bit of both. But it's one of those things. When they play, everybody shows up. The next song, as I've said before, is Swan Street by the Three. Um, they were a post-hardcore band that released music on Discord Records, again, owned by Ian MacKaye. The group was active from the summer of '86 until its breakup in early 1988, so right at a year and a half. The band's initial lineup included Ian MacKaye and Jeff Nelson of Minor Threat, along with Jeff Turner and Steve Niles of Grey Matter. MacKaye soon left the band and was replaced by Mark Haggerty, also from Grey Matter. Following MacKaye's departure, the group sought a new singer, auditioned Bruce Merkel of 9353 before deciding to proceed with Turner as a vocalist. Turner's increasingly sophisticated songwriting and Nelson's powerful, precise drumming distinguished the band from Grey Matter. Mark Anderson and Mark Jenkins observed in their history of the Washington, D.C. punk scene Dance of Days. Three Song Swan Street was described by Washingtonian magazine as one of the DC punk scene's most enduring song and an anthem of youthful confusion that still resonates. Their sole album, Dark Days Coming, was released in 1989 after the band broke up and remastered in 2010. The group also contributed an acoustic version of their song Swan Street to the State of the Union compilation that Discord Records released in 1989. And let me tell you, that State of the Union compilation was seminal for young indie kids all over the United States. Um, most of them were purchased on cassette. I think they actually had a vinyl release, but I've never seen it. And I've seen this album in many indie kids' hands. Um, but yeah, Swan Street to me is enigmatic of what this is supposed to sound like. It's hard, it's poignant, it's I don't know, it's Gen X angst. Boom, right there. That's what that is. What did you think about Swan Street by Three?
I wish we could have left the singer out of this. The singer was very nasally and annoying. If I could have listened to this one as just a pure instrumental, I would have liked this song.
Song's badass. The
Yeah.
instrument on the song is badass. That when because it starts with this acoustic guitar, and then and the singer kind of sings a little bit, and then the drum starts this. I don't even know what that is, a roll,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it just goes crazy. And then there's a guitar solo in a hardcore punk song. No, well, it's because they're not hardcore punk. It's a different sound. Again, I love this. His voice could be better. Also, they're called the
Yeah.
Three because when they were asking, "Hey, what do you want to call yourselves?" Well, we'll just call ourselves the Three. They didn't realize there were four people at the band, and they thought it was funny. Why are you calling us three? There's only three of you. No, there's four of us. Oh, well, we should call you the Three anyway.
Yeah. Just leave the
And
singer out, and I would have enjoyed this one.
but the singer's the one playing the acoustic guitar, like a ring in a bell.
Well, that's fine. Just don't sing.
The next uh the next song is Loose Booty by Junkyard Band. The band was formed in 1980 by children ranging in age from 8 to 13, living in the Berry Farm Government Housing Project in Washington, D.C. They were inspired to play after witnessing the performance of a local go-go band in their neighborhood. Not having resources to purchase traditional instruments, the children instead scrounged their neighborhoods in search of objects that emulate the sound of real instruments. Hubcaps, plastic buckets, crates, cans, and discarded pots and pans. These type of go-go bands became known as the bucket bands, and after a few informal performances in Berry Farm, the group was dubbed the Junkyard Band by locals. This is perhaps a reference to the animated television program Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, whose band, the Junkyard Gang, also performed on improvised instruments. With go-go music gaining in popularity and the band gaining local notoriety, the band began booking performances at schools, recreation centers, fundraisers, and government agencies. The band was also seen performing for tourists on the street of Washington, D.C. This popularity led to an appearance in the 1984 Cavalier Men's Store television advertisement, the 1983 film DC Cab, and the
Hmm.
1988 film Tougher Than Leather with Run DMC.
I love
It
DC
was an
Cab.
interaction with Run. Yeah, it's the band that's playing on the side is these guys, and I think
Hmm.
they're actually playing Loose Booty. Um, Run led to an eventual because they met Run, it led to an eventual contract with Run's older brother, Russell Simmons, Def Jam Recordings. Uh, Far from being a novelty act, Junkyard can be thought of as creators of the new school in terms of their contributions of the world of go-go. Um, so what do you think about Loose Booty by Junkyard Band?
This was another very annoying song. I didn't like this one at all. I mean, yuck, 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 yuck,
You didn't like
blech,
you Loose Booty?
yuck, yuck.
I
Yeah,
loved all the drumming in it. There's a
nah,
lot of drumming in Loose Booty.
nah,
And I think they
pass,
were still using the buckets.
pass, pass.
The
Next,
next the next song is probably the most well-known song from this era, from these people. Fugazi, which was the last band made by Ian Mackay after Egg Hunt. Because he made Egg Hunt on Easter and did like one album and then formed Fugazi with all his friends. The band consists of guitarist and vocalist Ian Mackay and Guy Picciotto, bassist Joe Lally, and drummer Brendan Canty. Fugazi ran for up until the early 2000s, like 2000. They said they were in a indefinite hiatus since 2003, but they still get together and do shows. Fugazi is the culmination of that sound, and they were really, really popular for a while. Their biggest song, which you used to hear way back in the day, was Waiting Room. And so now we want to talk about Fugazi's Waiting Room. Jeffrey, what do you think about Waiting Room?
this is another one that had a great open to it, but then the singer kicked in at the 36-second point. It ruined a perfectly good instrumental. It could have been a great song. Then the singer had to start. So it's just another one that I had a singer that ruined it for me.
That's actually Ian Mackay singing. Uh, the next band is Fort Knox 5, the Brazilian hipster. Fort Knox 5 was formed in 2003 by Steve Raskins, Rob Myers, Sid Barcelona, and John Horvath. The group chose their name because our studio has always been called Fort Knox. Though there were only four members in the group, the members hail from, again, kind of a callback to the three. Yeah, they call themselves the Fort Fox Five, but or Fort Knox Five. There's only four of them. um, the band formed their record label, Fort Knox Recordings, to release their music, and their label is now distributed by Washington, D.C.'s Discord Records. So these are guys that started with the go-go sound, and they were into hip hop, but they also liked the power and the frenetic energy of the hardcore movement and the emo movement. So basically, we're getting to the point where these bands are blending. Fox Force Fort Knox 5, I don't know why that's so hard to say,
You're thinking
is
of four.
where that
You're thinking of
basically
Force
happens.
Fox Five,
Yeah, yeah. Fox Force 5,
Fox Force
because there are
Five.
one,
Yeah,
two, three, four, five of them.
yeah.
Fort Knox 5. What did you think about that particular ditty?
Was glad to be back to funk again. I thought the song was a little repetitive, but
Mm-hmm.
overall it was a very nice instrumental. It's not one of
Yeah.
my favorites of the funk ones from this list, but way more tolerable than the punk stuff. I was just surprised
This
to have,
is this
have
is
an
one of their
instrumental in
early
here.
ones. You should check out some of their later stuff, the stuff
Okay.
that they're doing now, because they're still an active band.
I'd
You
I,
might
I'd
really
I'd
dig
I'd
these
listen
guys.
I'd listen to more from here from these.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yep.
But again, they're running they're distributing through that Discord Records, which is that hardcore punk label. The next song is Soulside, Times Like These. The original name of the band was Lunch Meat, and they were formed by high school students Bobby Sullivan, Chris Thompson, Scott McLeod, and Alexis Fleisching in 1985, again during that Revolution summer. The next summer, the band reunited under the name Soulside, recording an album at Inner Ear with Ian Mackay, Don Zintara, and Eli Janeway. The album was the second release on Sammich Records, Sammich, Sammich. At the end of that summer, the band again went on hiatus as the members returned to college, except for Thompson, who had decided not to return to college and formed Ignition, another band. When the other three band members returned from college in the summer of '87, they had all agreed to quit college and dedicated themselves to the band. They recruited high school friend Johnny Temple to replace Thompson on bass. In 1987, the band triggered our return to Inner Ear Studio with Ian Mackay to record their second album, Trigger, for Discord Records. The band toured throughout the United States. Soulside is still out. They're still doing stuff. We're going to talk about Soulside's times like these. Again, this is the melding of those two sounds. What do you think about Soulside?
I thought this one was very out of place on this list. I thought it was more Southern rock, like ZZ Top or Stevie Ray Vaughan. That being said, this may be my favorite song on this list. This one immediately goes into my playlist. I like this one a lot.
Soulside?
I love the gritty guitar on this one, but I really thought this was more Southern rock. I wouldn't have placed them in this list. I mean, I understand why they're in this list, but had you given me them and said,
Oh yeah, out
yeah,
of
tell me,
context, they don't sound like they. Yeah,
yeah, not at all. I like this one a lot.
that's what this stuff that's coming out of DC sounds like now.
Okay.
So if you might jump into the DCC now, if you like that. Um, but yeah, Soulside is pretty damn awesome. They do incorporate a little more hard rock into their stuff.
Hmm.
Um, just because they like hard rock guitar solos, which I can't blame them. Hard rock guitar solos are fucking awesome. Um, the next one is a dance band called Not a Strom. The song is Snake Juice, and it's originally from College Park, Maryland. Nada started as a radio DJ while going to college at the University of Maryland for 88.1 WMUC, which led to his interest in producing and being a DJ. In the early 2000s, Nada met Jesse Titsworth uh, through a mutual friend and was invited to spin at his party, Crunk in Washington, D.C. He went on to host Taxlow in Baltimore, and in 2007, Titsworth introduced Nada to Matt Nordstrom, uh, who he would who he formed like a DJ collective, and they decided to start making music together, which is why they're called Nada Strom. It's from Nada and Nordstrom. It's the electro house Baltimore club music. Nada is credited with creating the house and reggaeton fusion genres Moombaton. In November of 2009, while DJing in a high school house party, he slowed down Afrojack's Dutch house remix of Moonba with Chucky and Silver Economo to a mid-tempo of 108 beats per minute. And that's where reggaeton comes from. Um, but we're going to talk about Snake Juice, which is it's go-go. It's techno. There's some of that punk sound in it. There's I don't even know what to call this. But I thought, you know what? This is what's going on right now. You've got the band we just talked about that are mostly guitar based. Um, you've got Fort Knox 5 and you've got Not Strom. And that's what's going on in DC right now. Not Strom to me, this sounds like club music, but you can kind of hear that go-go sound in it. And again, those hardcore punk rock guitars are always there. But it also kind of rolls into reggaeton, which is weird. But I kind of understand that because, again, with Bad Brains made three or four reggae records because they were also a reggae band. What did you think about this one? Snake Juice by
So,
Nostrum.
so it's like you saved the best two for last. Um, this one easily could have been in an acid house list. It fits right in there.
Yes,
I like this one a lot. It's very trance. It's a great song to end this on. This one goes into my playlist.
right on.
I mean, overall on this list, I got to give it a 2.5 out of 10. If this is the DC indie scene, I want very little of it. The last two were great, but the rest of the list and the genre as a whole, honestly, it made me wish horrible and tragic things upon you.
Fort Knox 5, Not a Strom, and Soul Cider, what's going on now? But we could not get here without going through that other stuff first.
That's a damn shame, too.
I like some of that other stuff. Some of that other stuff is some of my favorite music. But yeah, you get Soul Side is fucking awesome. Not Strom, fucking awesome. And again, Fort Knox 5. I said it right that time because I keep wanting to call them Fox Force 5. Those guys are great. But yeah, that's it for the DC sound. Again, there are several hundred bands I did not list. I'm sorry about that, but
I'm not.
I had to bridge the gap. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really cool sound. But I want to explain how we got here because it's like, wait, what do you mean this techno band is releasing music out of a punk rock record label? Well, yeah, because it's DC. I have to explain how that happened. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. No, absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate the work that you take going into these, and I try to give them a listen as much as possible. Just some of them, I just want to beat myself over the head with a hammer. Speaking of,
Eh,
let's take over on the murdery side of the house.
murder.
For today, I got my information off Wikipedia, Yahoo News, New York Post, and 10 News Tennessee. And as I had previewed last week, this is the story of the Redhead Murders.
The Redhead Murders.
The Redhead Murders is a media epithet used to refer to a series of unsolved homicides of redheaded females in the United States between October 1978 and 1992, believed to have been committed by an unidentified male serial killer. The murders are believed to be related have occurred in the states including Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. The murders may have continued until 1992. The victims, many remaining unidentified for years, were usually women with reddish hair whose bodies were abandoned along major highways in the United States, often strangled. And officials believe that the women were likely hitchhiking or may have engaged in prostitution. Authorities are unsure how many people were responsible for these murders, if they were all performed by the same perpetrator or perpetrators, and how many victims there have been. It's believed there have been between a total of 5 to 14 victims. Of the presumed victims, four were identified by November of 2018. And the suspect was informally called the Bible Belt Strangler in 2018 because the territory where the bodies were found were all along the Bible Belt. So on September 16th, 1984, the body of a woman later identified as 28-year-old Lisa Nichols, who also used the last name of Jarvis, was found along Interstate 40 near West Memphis, Arkansas. She was wearing only a sweater. She was found to have been a resident of West Virginia, but authorities were not able to identify and contact her family members for some time, indicating that Nichols was estranged for them. She would eventually be identified in June of 1985, 9 months after she was murdered. She was identified through fingerprints, and she was identified by a couple from Florida who had allowed her to stay with them for a period of time. Nichols may have been murdered after leaving a truck stop along the highway and may have attempted to hitchhike. On January 1st, 1985, the bound body of a woman was found near Jellicoe, Tennessee, in Campbell County, down an embankment off the southbound side of Interstate 75. The remains were in an advanced state of decomp as she had been killed approximately 72 hours before. She was killed by strangulation. She was Caucasian and had long, shoulder length, curly red hair with green eyes. Her age was estimated between 17 and 25, but possibly as old as 30. She had been found clothed in a tan pullover, a shirt, and jeans. And additionally, she had been wrapped in a blanket, which was later found to have seminal fluid on it. The young woman had freckles over her body and various scars, including a burn mark on one arm, and she was 10 to 12 weeks pregnant when she died.
Hmm.
She had a partial upper denture holding two false teeth, and it's believed she was between 5 feet 1 and 5 feet 4 inches when she died, and it was approximately 110 to 115 pounds. On September 6, 2018, the Shelby County Sheriff's Office announced that the victim had been identified by fingerprint as Tina Marie McKinney, a farmer of Indiana. She was 21 at the time of her death and was last seen in Indianapolis, Indiana, accompanied by a trucker said to be headed to Kentucky. Farmer had one daughter prior to disappearing in 1984, and she was reported missing by her family at the time, yet authorities in Indiana did not enter her into national databases because at the time the state did not have a law common to many other states requiring law enforcement to enter unidentified victims into these databases.
Huh.
On April 3rd, 1985, the skeletonized partial remains of a young girl were discovered about 200 yards off Big Wheel Gap Road, 4 miles southwest of Jellicoe, Tennessee, in Campbell County near a strip mine. She was believed to have been dead between 1 and 4 years. Her age was estimated between 9 and 15. She was found by a passerby, and the cause of death is undetermined, which does not rule out homicide. There were 32 bones, including her skull, which were recovered from the scene. And her skull was complete enough to permit a facial reconstruction attempt. Again, this has always fascinated me how they can do that. A necklace and bracelet made of plastic buttons were found nearby, as well as a pair of size 5 boots and a few scraps of clothing. These items may or may not have belonged to her. Her hair and eye color at the time were unknown. Her age range is below the median for the other victims, but the circumstances of her death may connect her to them. Recent forensic analysis of the victim's remains indicated that she was not native to the area where she was discovered. The test showed she was most likely born in Florida or Central Texas and had later lived in the Midwest, Rocky Mountain states, the Southwest, or the Pacific Coast. And then on August 30th, 2022, she was identified as 15-year-old Tracy Sue Walker of Lafayette, Indiana. And as it turned out, she was redheaded as well. The connection was made after Othram Laboratories located a possible family member in the Lafayette area in the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or TBI. Intelligence analysts located several relatives there who confirmed they had a relative who disappeared in 1978. Tracy's mother had twice reported her as running away from their Eisenhower Court home in Lafayette, and Tracy was last seen at Tippecanoe Mall with a friend sometime in 1978. DNA samples were taken and submitted to the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, from which the UNTCHI identified Walker's remains. Her remains had been kept for years as Jane Doe by the University of Tennessee Anthropology Department, and her remains were transported the 400 miles from Tennessee back to Indiana so she could be properly put to rest. On March 3rd, 1985, the skeletonized body of a red-haired female was found in Pleasant View, Cheatham County, Tennessee. She was believed to have died between 3 and 5 months previously from an unknown cause. However, her case is possibly linked to the Redhead murders because her remains were found on the side of Interstate 24 between mile markers 29 and 30. Unlike some of the other victims, she was wearing clothing, a shirt, sweater, pants, and underwear. She was white, between 5 feet and 5 feet 2 inches tall. Her weight could not be determined. An examination of her teeth showed that the victim had evidence of crowding and overlapping in her mouth. And she was believed to be between the ages of 31 and 40 at the time of her death. In July of 2023, she was identified by the TBI and Othram Incorporated as 23-year-old Michelle LaVaughn Inman of Nashville, Tennessee, through forensic genetic genealogy. On April 1st, 1985, the body of a woman was found in a large white Admiral refrigerator in Gray, Knox County, Kentucky, alongside Route 25, and her death was by suffocation. The victim had been dead for a few days and was nude except for two distinctive necklace pendants, one of a heart, the other of a gold-colored eagle, and two pairs of socks, one white and the other white with green and yellow stripes. There were reports that the victim may have been soliciting ride to North Carolina over CB radio. 500 people attended the Jane Doe victim's funeral, which was televised. The case was a local sensation in Gray, as the town was a very quiet and sleepy place where little out of the ordinary usually happened. The refrigerator had a decal of the word Superwoman on the front. Distinguishing features of the body included a number of moles, one on the right side of her neck, one near one ankle, and one below each breast, a yellow stained upper incisor, and a scar and other marks on her abdomen, indicating she had borne a child. Her eyes were light brown and her hair was red and nearly a foot long, which fit the pattern of the Redhead murders. After the autopsy, this victim was determined to be between 24 and 35 years old and was approximately 4 feet 9 to 4 feet 11 inches tall. It's also possible that she owned a pair of boots that were found near the refrigerator. Several missing persons had been eliminated as possible matches for the victim, and after the case was publicized in January 2013, police received some tips, but it is unknown if they became solid leads. However, on October 1st, 2018, the Knox County Sheriff's Office announced the woman had been positively identified as SB Regina Black Pilgrim of Western North Carolina. A DNA match was made between her and her grown daughter, who said her mother disappeared when the girl was 6 weeks old. Pilgrim also had 4 other children. Priscilla Ann Blevins was a 27-year-old woman whose skeletal remains were found along Interstate 40 in Waynesville, North Carolina on March 29, 1985. It's believed that she had been placed at the location around the time she went missing a decade earlier in 1975. She was identified by DNA and dental records in 2012. No cause or manner of death was determined, and authorities have not specified the type of investigation is taking place surrounding her case. She did have reddish blonde hair. On May 25th, 1981, law enforcement recovered a body from a low water crossing on Highway MM near Dixon, Missouri. She had suffered trauma to the face and was strangled with pantyhose. She was found clothed without shoes and was estimated to be between 25 and 40 years of age. She had black hair, but nonetheless had been tentatively linked to the other cases in the murder series based on similarities of modus operandi. The fact that she was found near a road, that she was strangled. And if all these cases are truly the work of one person, then the fact that she had black hair might indicate that the killer was either experimenting on changing his MO, was expanding, or may have just simply been a crime of opportunity.
Yeah,
Because this is kind of the one outlier.
it's the outlier. Everything else fit except for the color of her hair.
Yes.
Is it possible she could have been wearing a wig too?
They said she had black hair, so I would assume not. Or
Okay.
you're saying she may have been wearing a redhead wig. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Because they didn't find anything with that. She was named Pulaski Jane Doe, and isotope testing later showed she had not lived in Missouri for more than a few years and most likely spent most of her life in the southeastern region of the United States. She was tentatively identified by the DNA Doe Project in December 2019 as Karen K. Nippers, who was 32 years old when she murdered, with legal confirmation taking place on May 25th, 2021. On February 13th, 1983, the naked body of a white female was found alongside Route 250 near Littleton in Wetzel County, West Virginia. A pair of senior citizens reported the body, which they originally had thought was a display mannequin. Say it with me. It's never a
It's
mannequin.
never a mannequin. It's never a mannequin.
The body had been placed at the area recently as snow was on the ground, but not on the body. Police said that tire tracks and footprints nearby indicated that she was likely transported to the site after death from another location. Their examination concluded she had died about 2 days previously and was not a victim of sexual assault. Her cause of death was undetermined. Her hair was auburn, and by 1985, she was linked possibly to other redheaded women found as homicide victims whose deaths seemed to be related. With an estimated age between 35 and 45, this victim appeared to have been older than the median for the other women grouped as victims of the serial killer. Her height was estimated at 5 feet 6 inches and weighed at 135 pounds. Her eyes were presumed to be brown, although postmortem changes may have affected the eye color. I didn't know that happened. She had two scars, one typical of a cesarean section and another on one index finger. Her legs and underarms were shaven, indicating attention to grooming, not characteristic of a transient or hitchhiker. And witnesses described seeing a middle aged white male about 5 feet 10 inches and weighing 185 to 200 pounds near the area where the body was found. The victim may have been seen alive in Wheeling, West Virginia, as an employee or a customer at a bar. Lori Pennell, previously known as DeSoto County Jane Doe, was a woman found murdered on January 24th, 1985, in Olive Branch, Mississippi. Lori was found by a truck driver driving southbound on U.S. Highway 78, 100 feet of the Coldwater River Bridge around 7:30 a.m. Her body was 20 feet south of the highway, and her shoes, undergarments, and jacket were missing. She was strangled with ligature and possibly sexually assaulted. She was 22 years old and had light red to blonde wavy hair. She was approximately 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 4 inches tall with a weight of 105 to 130 pounds. And authorities also discovered tattoos on the inside of both ankles, as well as a small surgical scar on her left forearm. And she had 3 piercings in each ear, and her fingernails were very deeply bitten. On April 14th, 1985, the body of a young white female was found in Greenville, Greene County, Tennessee. She was determined to have been killed between 3 and 6 weeks prior by severe blunt force trauma and possibly a stab wound. Her body was in an advanced state of decomp. Police
Blunt
were
force
a
trauma?
mm-hmm,
Okay.
was blunt force trauma. This was a different one. Police were able to obtain her fingerprints as well as DNA and dental information. She had been approximately 6 to 8 weeks pregnant, miscarrying shortly before death. Notice that a lot of these were either pregnant or had given birth.
Mm-hmm.
She was estimated to be between 14 and 20 years old, possibly as old as 25. She was approximately 5 feet 4 inches to 5 feet 6 inches tall with a weight of 130 to 140 pounds. She had a slight overbite and had some fillings in her teeth, showing that she had dental care in her life. Her fingernails had pink polish. And because she had light brown to darkish blonde hair with red headlights, her case was thought to be possibly related to the Redhead murders, even though she wasn't strangled to death. Authorities hoped in late April of 85 that they would identify her body through fingerprints, but were unsuccessful. 6 missing women were ruled out as possible identities of the victim, but then she was not identified until November 2018 when officials announced she was New Hampshire native Elizabeth Lamott, which we mentioned last week.
Yes, she wasn't killed by.
Terry
Well,
Rasmussen.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, possibly, but they not sure. Elizabeth was 17 at the time of her death. She disappeared on April 6th, 1984. She was identified by a DNA match with the DNA obtained from Lamott's family by New Hampshire police in 2017. She had been staying at a group home in Manchester, New Hampshire, and never returned to her family once gaining furlough. Her family was initially asked for a DNA profile to compare it to the adult female victim of the Bear Brook murders. An unidentified girlfriend of the suspect, alias Robert Evans, was known by the same name as Elizabeth. Robert Evans, of course, was later revealed to be the serial killer Terry Peter Rasmussen. If you want more on Terry Peter Rasmussen and the Bear Brook murders, stop this episode, go back to last week's episode.
Go back to last one.
We'll pause while you do that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back.
Okay.
Pulaski County Jane Doe was a woman who was found deceased on April 20th, 1985, in Wrightsville, Arkansas. She was estimated to be between 30 and 40 years old. She was approximately 5 feet 3 inches tall. She had blondish red hair and previously had fractured her left femur. Her cause of death has neither been released nor properly determined, and little information has been made available about her case. Roane County Jane Doe was a woman found on August 29th, 1987, in Roane County, Tennessee. She was estimated to be between 35 and 50 years old and between 5 feet and 5 feet 8 inches in height. She had naturally brown hair, which was dyed reddish. She had a hysterectomy and a tracheotomy. She had a mole on the left side of her back and sported breast implants. Additionally, an old gunshot wound to her third thoracic vertebra found the bullet still firmly lodged in her spine. And authorities determined the body had been burned, likely deliberately to hinder identification experts. She is believed to have been murdered. In 2023, she was identified as Betty Lou Weisley of Knox County. Stacy Lynn Chahorsky was a woman who was found strangled to death in Rising Fawn, Georgia in late 1988. She was officially reported missing in January 1989, 4 months after she was last contacted. Stacy Lynn had informed her mother via telephone she was planning to hitch rides from her current location in North Carolina to her home state, Michigan, to the cities of Flint and Muskegon. The victim's remains were discovered along the east side of northbound I-59 near Rising Fawn in Dade County, Georgia, approximately 5 miles from the Georgia-Alabama state line. It was suspected that the victim may have been a hitchhiker prior to identification, but it was determined that she had been sexually assaulted and strangled. She had reddish, strawberry blonde, auburn, or red shoulder length hair with frosted ends. And in 2019, her age was adjusted to 25 to 35. Before this, she was thought to be as young as 16 and a possible runaway. She was identified with the assistance from Othram Incorporated in March of 2022. On September 6, 2022, Chahorsky's killer was identified as trucker and stunt driver Henry Frederick Haas Wise, who would have been 34 years old at the time of her murder. He worked for the Western Carolina Trucking Company and commonly drove through Chattanooga, Nashville, Tennessee, and Birmingham, Alabama. He had a criminal history in 3 states, ranging from theft and assault to obstruction of a police officer. Wise burned to death in a car accident at Myrtle Beach Speedway in South Carolina in 1999. His DNA was used to identify him as Stacy's killer. And so I'm curious if they are trying to match him against the others of the Redheaded Murders. Being a trucker and traveling a lot would make some
I was
sense
gonna
that this
say
could
this
be
guy's a
him.
trucker.
Yeah, it makes sense it could be him. However, I haven't found any information on him since 2022.
Okay.
It's believed that most of the victims remained unidentified due to their estrangement from family members or from not being native to the states from which they were found. Around 1985, soon after the Greene County victim was discovered, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi requested the Federal Bureau of Investigation for assistance with their cases as inconsistencies existed. Victims were found both clothed and unclothed and had some sexual encounter before their murders. During the conference, it was stated that four victims were found in Texas, and the victim found in 81 in Ohio, nicknamed Buckskin Girl, later identified as Marcia King, were ruled out in 1985 as possible victims of the Redhead murders. Another possible suspect emerged around 1985 when 37-year-old trucker Jerry Leon Johns attacked and attempted to strangle a woman named Linda Shackey, who had reddish hair. He left the victim lying near a highway thinking her dead, but she survived the attack after she had been bound, strangled, and dumped along I-40. Her testimony assisted in putting Johns behind bars. Like Tina Farmer, who we talked about earlier, Shackey had been choked with a pair of cloth ripped from her t-shirt, bound and left for dead inside a storm drain under I-40 near Watt Road. Like Farmer and other potential victims of the redheaded murder, Shackey also had red hair. Um, Jerry Johns was later dismissed as the Redhead Murders case in the Redhead Murders case, but was convicted of Shackey's kidnapping in 1987. Despite his exclusion from the case, it was announced that DNA from Johns was matched to Tina Farmer through CODIS in 2016. He died in prison in 2015 at the age of 67, and a grand jury decided he would have been indicted for the slaying had he been alive. Johns was a trucker from Cleveland, Tennessee before his arrest, but it was not specified whether he's considered a suspect in the other redheaded murders. Another suspect, a 32-year-old trucker in Pennsylvania, was questioned after kidnapping and raping a young woman in Indiana. She managed to escape before sustaining further injury, but this suspect was also dismissed from the investigation after being questioned by Tennessee police. In 2018, an Elizabethton, Tennessee teacher, Alex Campbell, offered a sociology class studying these murders. The class potentially identified three new victims and developed a profile for the killer. And over the course of the semester, the students spoke with professional investigators, gathered evidence, and pieced together over 40-year-old mystery to identify the killer responsible for at least 6 murders of the redheaded white women. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has agreed with the students' theory, but no charges have yet been filed against the suspect. They revealed their findings in a 10-episode podcast called Murder 101, and they believe that Jerry Leon Johns is guilty for all the redhead murders. The TBI later announced the late trucker as a suspect, giving no credit to the students or podcast producer Shane Waters, which Campbell said that he took harder than they did. The TBI is, however, currently investigating to see if Johns could be tied to the other redheaded murders. So potentially one, potentially multiple people who have done this. It is a little unusual that they were all redheaded, except one. They were all white females. They were all in the relatively similar age group, found with similar MOs. So I do agree that these are all related, and they are the work of a serial killer or serial killers. Um, but yeah, that's the story of the Redhead murders.
Well, thank you for that. I was there, as you were talking, I was like, okay, this person is a trucker and he's picking up people at truck stops, either
Mm-hmm.
hitchhikers or lot lizards.
Right, either hitchhikers or prostitutes,
Yeah.
engaging in sex work. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely agree with that. So, um, I just when I'd researched last week's story and as I was going through the research, mentioned the Redhead murders. I'm like, oh, well, I need to go look that up. Oh, wow,
You need to go look that one
this
up.
is really
Yeah.
wild. So so that's how I came to that. But yeah, thanks for sticking with me on that one.
Thank you.
Well, that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub for everything that we discuss here. You'll find links to the episode plus pictures of what we talked about. And you'll also find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yes, you should have all of that music on that YouTube page.
Yay. I hate you. Also on our webpage, you can find the link to our merchandise, which if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider something from there. That along, you can find the link to our Patreon, where if you wish to become a patron, help us with the costs that are associated with the show. It does cost to keep us going, keep us on the air, keep our uploads and our website and everything that goes along with that. We do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and finds others find our content that may want to listen to the topics we talk about, unless we're talking about fucking punk. And yeah, so please do leave 5-star review wherever you can.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. With that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey, very annoyed at the nerdery, but I'm Jeffrey with your murdery.
Play the music.